Trump's Golan announcement was no impulse tweet. Donald Trump overturned decades of U.S. policy via Twitter when he declared on Thursday that the United States should recognize Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, a disputed territory Israel seized in the 1967 war with Syria. The timing of the announcement, ahead of Israeli elections on April 9, drew immediate that it was aimed to benefit Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who faces a competitive campaign as well as a looming over alleged corruption. Following the move, Texas Senator Ted Cruz was already drafting a plan to reinforce Israel's control over the territory, which it effectively annexed in 1981, last summer. The rationale report. In the meantime, the Cruz plan was rolling along, and was introduced as a Senate resolution co-sponsored by the Republican Tom Cotton in December. That was only days, and no U.S. troops stated mission there was the defeat of ISIS. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has also said that the U.S. will stay until was out of Syria. The question of who, Senator Lindsey Graham, a co-sponsor of the bill, went to the area with Netanyahu earlier this month. Netanyahu is, much like with the embassy move, the announcement is awkward for Washington's Western and Arab allies, whose support the administration will need when the White House unveils its long-awaited peace plan. The plan is expected. As for the Syrians, who are still in the midst of a civil war, the move is another blow. It really puts them. Rhonda Slim, a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute, raised similar concerns, saying the move would eliminate any restraint Assad and Iran felt about allowing the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps freedom of maneuver near Israel's border. For the policy's backers, however, declaring Israeli sovereignty over the Golan is a recognition of reality in the same way that Trump's earlier decision to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem was a recognition that the city is Israel's capital despite its contested status. But it's not just that. Just this morning, however, Pompeo demurred when asked if such a shift was imminent. A recent Human
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.